With the success of any great game comes the desire to expand its reach, and in 2008, EA ported over a beloved game onto the weaker Nintendo Wii with a spin-off into a new story within the Skate universe. The end result was Skate It, developed by EA Montreal, known mostly for the short-lived Army of Two franchise. On the other side of the coin, Pro Skater was taking a year off to develop their polarizing Ride motion control system, but delivered in the meantime Tony Hawk's Motion on DS. The worst game of the entire franchise. Nice one, guys. Now look, you've probably seen me talk about Ride and Shred in the past, and they weren't as bad as people thought, okay? Real talk. I've played them both to completion, and for what it was, I had a bit of fun. Don't get me wrong, they were far from perfect, but the takeaway for me has remained in the back of my head all of these years. Taking the time to learn the controller and using the game's loose on-rails play mode did successfully deliver an often enjoyable experience. The foundation was there, is the point that I'm trying to make with this. And so if they got that semi-decent, then I shouldn't be so scared about what I might find in Skate It. And yet now that I'm here and staring down the barrel of a console with motion controls at the core of its DNA, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't even just a teeny bit apprehensive about this game. Out of everything I'm covering this week, it was certainly the most potentially infuriating, but was all of that negative anticipation warranted? Well, I'm afraid that there's only one way to find out. So, for this one, I think I'm gonna need some protection. My goal, much like with Ride, was to give this the fairest chance possible, so before starting the main career mode, I took to the tutorials to learn the 3 different styles of controls. Now, I did record my very first time playing the game and testing out these different play styles. You can find the full video of that exclusively over on Patreon, but here I'm just going to quickly go over my discoveries, describe how each of these control systems work, and more importantly, how they feel to play. The first method is simply using the Wiimote by its lonesome, and this is really awkward because all of your movement is dependent on how steady and precise you can flick your hand around. Rather than opt for the more traditional Pro Skater control setup, they've actually carried over the flick system mechanics from the first game, meaning that the Wiimote is the skateboard. You can lean left or right to turn, flicking up to ollie, and all of your tricks are some variation on that flick motion. This is a disaster. There are just too many specific, delicate commands linked to a single point of contact. Just getting the hang of movement is a challenge, but adding in tricks and, God forbid, rotations once you get into a half pipe, it's absolutely not gonna happen. Control option 2 is using the Wiimote accompanied by a nunchuck, and already things are much cleaner. While there is still a learning curve with this, having your movement controls separate from all of this waggle garbage is a godsend. You actually feel like you've got some control, and starting to mess around in free skate, this is absolutely a winning combination. Look, I actually managed to pull off a decent trick here. Man. Alright, that's actually not half bad, but there is a third way to play this game, and you may have already guessed what it is. The Wii Balance Board. Oh boy, here we go! Now, this makes sense, right? We're going to tilt our body and the weight distribution is going to determine different tricks. Unlike Ride, however, which also had sensors on the front and sides to detect your hands and feet, we still need to awkwardly hold the standalone Wiimote while standing on the damn thing to perform certain commands. And wow, is it trash! Reminds me of a garbage plug and play I had as a kid. And if anyone has this thing lying around, send it to my PO box and I'll review it. But yeah, this does not work, and there are 2 big reasons why. Firstly, this is a flat board. There is no tilting or turning, you can't jump on it. In fact, the game cracks the shits and forces a recalibration sequence, even if you so much as lose your balance and step off the shitting thing for a brief moment. Ride didn't do that. You could legitimately balance a manual, shove it to perform a shove it in the game, grab the thing with your hands and step off at any time. But on that point, Wii Fit also did it way better. And sure, that was only a little mini game, but it just feels so much more reliable than this. And look, I'm only talking about navigation right now. I haven't even begun to discuss performing tricks, and oh my god, using the balance board means that all of your mechanics are now tied down to a single command point again. And it doesn't work! Take a look at how we perform tricks in the game. Just look at this screen, this is all we get. What does it even mean? These hieroglyphics are well over my head, and I've fully played this game now that I'm making the video, yet it's still a mystery to me, so let me try to break this down as practically as possible. You are supposed to cycle through the different trick categories to select what moves will be activated by the balance board, while still pushing around with the A button and applying specific amounts of pressure to particular zones on the board, but not too much pressure or you'll accidentally veer into the nearest wall and die. Awesome. Now, Tony Hawk Ride did have a full manual control mode that was much the same as this, just a complete fucking disaster. It required far too much brain power and finesse for the average square-eyed jack, and that's why the assistance of being on a set trajectory helped that experience be so much more enjoyable and accessible, and from what I can find, there just doesn't seem to be an option for that here. So, by process of elimination, I've concluded that the best way to play this game is with the Wiimote Nunchuck combo. Meaning that all the extra effort I put into the setup of this video was a complete waste of time. Great. Now I've got to fucking drag the couch back across the room. Ugh. God, this is never worth the effort. For God's sakes. Waste my time setting up this damn board and these damn elbow pads. Ugh. You know what? I might actually keep the helmet on because we're definitely going to be doing a lot of waggling, if you know what I mean. And the last thing I want is for this thing to fly off and cave in my skull like a railroad spike. Alright. Let's play this damn game. Okay, man, that was a lot to take in, but it was a necessary evil if we want to give Skate It the best chance possible for success, and now that our controls are all figured out, we can get into the story mode. We make our character and we're quickly back in San Vanalona, which is still a vibrant, bustling world until it's immediately destroyed by some earth-shattering disaster, as beautifully illustrated as you can see here. We pick up the pieces as a new, unknown skater shredding the empty ruins, and old mate Loudmouth from the first game is back to live as the voice inside of our head and film all of our skating across the destroyed city. I wouldn't have expected a plot point like that in the simulation skating franchise. How very World Destruction Tour American Wasteland of you. As a result, the game looks subpar. Graphical limitations aside, the colour palette reflects the almost apocalyptic vibe present across most of the levels. There's no open world either, but you know what? That's fine. We still get to skate some of the prime locations such as the community centre, the mega ramp and the Matrix Plaza in the city centre, but as you can see, everything around us is in shambles. Architecture leveled to the ground, infrastructure devastated, and not a single living thing in sight. It's quite liminal coming off of what felt like such an alive video game world previously. Call it art direction, maybe. Call it limitations, most likely. We're merely skating an empty husk of what was so loved about the original game, but once you've adjusted to your controls finally and start working to tear down what's left of the sick lines on each map, you'll quickly notice that there is a very bizarre lack of focus or pacing in the game. It seems that as soon as we enter one location, we complete a single objective and get quickly shuffled onto the next before even getting the opportunity to explore around. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, we're being invited to visit Paris? What's that about? Well, since San Van has been destroyed, all of the pros have bailed out around the world to skate, and we get to tag along to locations like Shanghai, Rio, and Barcelona. And man, it's really strange. Even though it's a lot more cartoonish and silly to set the adventure in a bombed out city, that alone as a premise for both storytelling and level design could provide so much potential for a great game, and Tony Hawk is the proof of that. Being constantly removed from it to genuine real world locations feels really void of creativity for me. The world of Skate was already inspired by some of the real world's most prominent skating cities. Why do we need to actually visit boring old real locations? It's such an odd direction to take, and clearly being stuck inside these creative boundaries wasn't something the development team were interested in, as a vast majority of the game's missions and key progression points take place outside of the destroyed city. I mean, are we supposed to be skating this unreal landscape or not? You can't have it both ways, and the result is an oddly paced clusterfuck. I will say that as someone who really enjoys studying level design and world building, I can always appreciate seeing different imaginary interpretations of real world locations in video games, but truth be told, many of these feel like bootleg Tony Hawk levels, which is a serious red flag for the hot, new, innovative competition. It really makes it hit home just the dregs of this underutilized concept that failed this game completely. I just can't get over how weird it is for that, and it doesn't take long for the process to start to drain you. Oh man, let me tell you, playing this game, your arm will most certainly start to get wanker's cramp, so remember to take routine breaks, otherwise you'll be feeling some genuine discomfort. It actually gets quite painful after a while, I'm not even kidding. And that's just what we want from our gaming experience, to sit around in pain, as if we don't already do enough of that. Man, this sucks. Something cool they have tried to implement is creative spots that let you move various obstacles around to make skatable terrain. It's definitely no creator park, and hell, it can't even compare to the rigging mode in Proving Ground, but I guess it is proof of concept for what would come later on down the line in future games. The soundtrack also leaves much to be desired. It's just limited, and without any relaxing vibes, you find yourself opening up the menu to complete tasks rather than exploring and naturally stumbling into cool new events, stripping Skate of the most highly regarded feature. And the longer you play, you think controls will get easier, but they seem to slowly grow more and more inconsistent. Suddenly certain tricks are uncertain, body rotations in mid-air never worked for me throughout the whole game, and I think the nunchuck I was using may be suffering from a little bit of drift. I mean, can you tell? Bastard thing. But even after trying all of the different sticks I own and getting one in perfect working order, trying to do rolls and flips on the mega ramps is the most unreliable thing I've ever seen, which sucks because these challenges often come with steep competition. Once we snap the Thrasher cover photo and drop in on this half pipe, boom. What an ending shot right there. It's absolutely terrible. Overall, I would argue that this is still definitely a lot better than I was expecting. The levels were all fine for the most part, flick controls work and can be brute force when they don't, so you're never going to get stuck anywhere for too long. But that's about it. The game is a visual mess, and the structure really just feels like this was a rush job. The biggest error is without that free-flowing, relaxed exploration, Skate It turns into a bit of skate shit, and comes across as nothing more than a poor man's Tony Hawk game. That's why this gets a 4 out of 10. Mediocre. What more can I say? Well, apparently, there is actually a lot more to talk about, because this game also got a version on the Nintendo DS. Yeah, Merry Christmas everyone. God, as long as it doesn't have that bullshit motion control stuff that Tony Hawk Motion had, then man, this is going to be a 10 on 10 out of the gate. But thinking back on it, the Pro Skater franchise did have a strong start on the DS. Key word being start. It went downhill pretty quickly. So I am really curious to see what Skate It can offer to the mix. This version was handled by Exient Entertainment, who I've never really heard of before, and according to Wikipedia, they mostly handle a lot of sports and racing downgrades onto portable platforms, dating all the way back to the Game Boy Advance and Nokia's N-Gage of all things. Man, I've really got to stop setting all these games up for such low expectations with my introductions. As you might expect, this time we're going to be utilising the DS touchpad for all of our tricks, but before we can get started, check out the Creator Skater options. I know it's pretty standard stuff, but I've seen far worse in the later DS Tony Hawk games, so this is totally fine. Doing the tutorial though... Like the Wii version, it's not as bad as I was expecting. Movement is on the D-pad while pushing, and all of your tricks are done by touching the stylus onto the bottom screen, which has this skateboard graphic, and it does work. The flick-it system carries over actually a lot better than I would have guessed, as we mimic very similar motions as seen in the main games. One problem I do have with this though is the board being at an angle. I'm sure this was to make it feel more natural with how you would actually be holding the system while playing, but it clashes with the muscle memory of how tricks need to be done. I do also find it kind of awkward having to press the shoulder buttons to perform grab moves. I don't know because I'm not a DS baby, but playing this thing gives me hand cramps very quickly. I think it's the fact that I'm supporting the entire system with only one hand instead of two, and applying that extra pressure on the opposite side to perform all of the actions is just not comfortable. Like I said, maybe I'm just not accustomed to playing DS games, but the only way I can handle this for longer than 30 minutes at a time is by resting the damn thing on a desk, which isn't a problem for literally any other game on the system for me. With that out of the way though, I actually don't have too many complaints here. This is indeed the Wii version ported over with the rapid progression, familiar courses, and international ones. I love arriving in Paris and instead of getting bustling streets, we're instead just inside some random warehouse. And it's not a good warehouse either. The San Vanalona courses are quite accurate though, even the Mega Ramp makes an appearance and is actually skatable for the most part. Graphically it's all well and good, though the soundtrack is exhausting, as we only get 4 licensed tracks, so they'll be replaying before you're even out of the tutorial. Best bet is to mute that shit and blast some quality tunes of your own. The coolest feature of this game by far though has to be Creator Spot, which is Creator Park essentially. And look at this, look how much more thought and effort has been put into this than we saw on the console version. As we progress through the story, we get to unlock a bunch of different objects that can all be used to create a park of our own, and this is actually quite fun. Objects can be snapped together, we've got plenty of room to experiment, and a decent variety of parts to incorporate here. This is how you do creatable levels in a game of this nature, and for all of these modes that I've tested over the years, for a handheld port, it's definitely one of the stronger ones, so good job guys. But yeah, that's about all I have to say on this one. The career mode is next to identical regarding progressions, so I don't really need to see it again, and with how much these controls hurt my hands playing, it kills my interest in it, I'm not gonna lie. If I wanted to get stuck in an endless competition of skate where the AI refuses to go down, then I'd just subject myself to more of Ride. Its biggest downfall may just be the flaky controls simply not registering certain tricks, but even despite that, I'd argue that it still succeeds in achieving that feel of a skate sim. But next to Tony Hawk's DS adventures, it is severely lacking refined and reliable control, as well as with its presentation. And then weirdly, 2 years later, this game would get ported onto iOS with touch controls, so thank God that I can't play that one anymore because I'm done with this. And that's the Skate experience on Nintendo. Look, it really wasn't the best, but having said that, there were definitely some interesting points of note, such as the customizable terrain, the international locations, as well as the cartoonish narrative. Between the DS version and the Wii game, I think they're both pretty much on the same level, and that level is subpar for the standards set by what could possibly be considered the greatest skateboarding video game franchise of all time. Yeah, I said that. And to prove my point, be sure to tune in tomorrow when we take a look at Skate 2. But until then, I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, remember to share this with your friends on social media. I'm Square-Eyed Jack, and I hope you have a great fucking day. Thanks for watching.